What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Corvette Weekly. We are here with David from DBM Racing.
I
Unfortunately,
guess.
Brandon can't join us tonight. He is off saving the world. Um, yeah, but we're
Yeah,
going to
his
start.
schedule gets mixed up in the summer to color the holidays, so we'll be back in sync after this. So
He literally is saving lives, so we'll give him a
yeah,
pass. But
right.
as we start out every one of these Corvette Weeklies, guys, we're going to mention quickly the sponsors. Of course, this is brought to you by the NCM Insurance. Links are in the description down below. If you guys could please go check them out. Even if you don't think they're going to save you any money, there's no cost, there's no hit on your credit or anything. Check out the link in the description below and put HPO or horsepower obsessed in at step number 5 when it asks you how you heard about us. That's going to give you the best possible rate. And honestly, even if you're not looking to make a change, check it out anyway, because you might be surprised what kind of rate you can get from them. So aside from that, there is also a Z06 giveaway down there that if you don't want to wait for the ZR1, you can actually win a Z06 and you'll get extra entries just for clicking the link in the description down below because you did it on a Horsepower Obsessed YouTube channel. You'll get 50% more entries for free. So if you want to win a Z06 while you're waiting for the ZR1, check that out.
Right.
But ultimately, guys, I know why most of you are here. You're here because you want to talk about the ZR1, and there's a lot to talk about. There is a lot to kind of unpack with the reveal, the videos that we've seen, stuff that Tadge has said in the background, stuff that has kind of leaked in the background. We'll say there's a lot to talk about here. So
Yep.
number one, you guys have probably already all seen it. The reveal of the ZR1. We are getting a 1,064 horsepower car when all of us assumed we were getting somewhere between 825 to 850. So they drop a bomb on us. We get 1,024 horsepower, 828 pound-feet of torque. No one saw this coming. Everybody saw this coming for the Zora. No one saw this coming for the ZR1.
Yeah, there's
So,
a story behind that too. I'll talk about that. I was reading into about the horsepower, where how they got to the horsepower number.
okay. Yeah, we'll talk
Yep.
about that in a second because there's actually
Yep.
part of that I wanted to talk about too. But
Yep.
with all this said, there is already speculation starting for the Zora model. So, how much horsepower is the Zora going to have? And it's interesting because there is a really good chance that it comes out with exactly the amount of horsepower you think it's going to have, which is 1,224. And
Right.
yes, the only difference there is the front hybrid motor. So we're going to very likely see the Zora with a front motor, which gives it the 1224. And then I would say the only other differentiating factor that's going to separate the Zora from the ZR1 is active aero. I think we're going to get the front hybrid motor and active aero. And again, this still could be a package to onto the ZR1. They may not actually make this a standalone car versus just 2027 there's a new package check mark for the ZR1.
Right.
So that would be, in my opinion, that would be the best way to do it to prevent the watering down of the brand with a bunch of different performance models. Because now it's just kind of a performance package. So I think that could be the case. Now, another thing I wanted to clear up is I got a bunch of questions, and I don't know if any of you guys question this, but whenever I was doing the live reveal for the ZR1, almost everybody in there thought that the car that the ZR1 was parked beside, the yellow ZR1 was parked beside, was blue. It's not blue.
It's
That
hysteria.
is the Hysteria purple car, 100% confirmed. That is not a blue
Yep.
car. It
Yep.
looks extremely blue.
It
It's
looks
not
blue.
blue. I think it's funny because I literally had a couple people arguing with me on the live video. They're like, that's not purple. And I said, I know it's not purple, but it is purple. Like
Right.
it looks
No,
very, very blue.
it is very blue. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to pull up this picture while we're talking about it because you can even
Well,
see it.
and that one too, like, on the C7 ZR1, the difference to me between the regular and then the ZTK with the wing, is like, it still was a lot more ZR1-ish, right, than the
Yep.
C706. Whereas that one, to me,
Looks like a
I'm
Z06.
more yeah,
Yep.
exactly, man, dude. You have to ZTK this car. You
Oh,
have
100%.
to.
100%.
You have to. There's no way you go with the base ZR1 and have people other than the split window if you've got a coupe, which definitely would look cool.
Yeah,
But when you see the two side by side sitting there, there's no way you don't click a
I know.
ZTK pack. No way.
I totally agree, and we'll talk more about that in a second, but I wanted to
Yep.
show this picture really quick. This is on GM's website. That car that you're seeing right there, that's not blue. That is a purple. That's the Hysteria purple. Now, I know
Yep.
me and David obviously got to see the purple at the bash, so we kind of knew. And
Right.
for the people who didn't know, they thought they were seeing a blue because exactly, Kerry Glock says it perfectly. It's blurple. And that's the messed up part is it's really not purple, but at the
No.
same time, this is GM's purple. So
Well, and Justin, what was the feedback we all get? Like you, me, Amber, like everybody that had seen it, right? What was the thing we were saying? We're like,
safe.
ah, there's a lot of blue in that, right? Like that's what we said when we saw it at the bash was
Yep.
that purple's not really purple. There's a
No.
lot of blue in that purple. So
And that's Shane said it best, I think, whenever he said it was a safe purple. It really
safe
is.
purple. That's
It's
right.
it's GM's way of having a purple in their lineup without offending people. Now, here this picture here specifically, this picture drives me insane because that's blue all day long right there, but that is
Yeah.
purple. That is their purple car. But tell me that that doesn't look 100% blue. I see almost no purple at all in that picture.
In that picture, yeah, you
Yeah.
don't see. And again, the other thing is too, like that's a convertible, so you don't get the split window. So if you're standing at that angle,
Yep.
looking at that car in the parking
That's a
lot, do you know
Z06.
that's a,
Yep.
there you go, exactly, 100%, man.
Yep. And that's kind of
Yep.
a weird thing, but I just want to clear that up really quick because I know a lot of people had called me out on being wrong on the color. I wasn't wrong. It is purple. But another thing was just brought up here was the red C8 Z06 says, I wonder how much the ZR1 will weigh. We do have a number. It is
Yeah.
160 pounds more than the Z06.
Yeah.
So not bad, but not great. So it's not E-ray levels of weight increase, but it is enough that still I'm like, I kind of wish we wouldn't have done that. Now, at the same time, though, if you guys haven't seen, and I'll see if GM has a picture of this on our website, the standalone engine picture, the engine for this thing is massive. So the fact that
Yeah.
they only increased it by 160 pounds, actually, here it is. It's just, it's huge. I mean, this thing, it's
Yeah.
literally, it's going to be really hard to work on this car inside of the
Oh
car
my
without,
God, it's gonna be a nightmare. And the weight, like you got two turbos, right?
yep.
Which aren't light.
Yep,
They're
all the
aluminum, but they're
cooling.
not light. You got all the cooling for that.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm actually amazed that it only picked up that much weight. To be honest with you, when I saw the figures after when I started doing the deep dive on the LT7 and kind of the setup on it,
Yep.
I can't believe they did it with only adding that much weight to it. It's
I
crazy.
know, and trust me, I there's very little about this car I don't like, but at the
Right.
same time, I would have loved to have seen them find a way to, if nothing else, keep the weight the same. But I understand. I totally get because I mean turbos aren't light either. I mean those are big pieces of metal that have to be able to handle what was the surface temperature of the
1900.
yeah, like it has to be able to handle 1900 degrees. So I mean, you can imagine the kind of the thickness of that metal to be able to handle that. And then was it 31 pounds of thrust or something that the turbos create? Literally thrust, not
Right.
power, not horsepower. It's creating thrust as if the car could take off like an
Yeah,
airplane.
and these are not little turtles. This
No,
this was the
they're
biggest thing.
big.
Now, anybody that's in the comment section, I don't have my comments up because I'm traveling this weekend. But if you're a racer and you know a 76 millimeter turbo is
Oh,
not a little
no.
turbo. Each one of those turbos could do 1200 on a motor by itself, no problem.
Exactly.
And they've got two of them on this car. And then we'll get to the anti-lag, we'll get to all
Yeah.
this stuff, but there's such cool stuff. But yeah, those are massive turbos to have two.
Yeah.
And it's always been in the past when you had twin turbo cars, like people would do manufacturers, not crazy people like us. They would do a smaller turbo that would spool quicker and then a
Quicker.
larger
Yep.
turbo that would kind of pick up. These are two 76 millimeter turbos,
Yep.
one on each side of the car. That's crazy. Crazy.
And it's funny because I think you guys were on with me whenever we were talking about that leak. Yeah, you were. We were talking about the
Yep.
leak of the turbo housing, and sure enough, that was the
Yeah, the
one that
manifolds.
that's
It's
100% that's the
exactly.
one they used, and they
Yep.
used that for exactly what I said they were going to use it for was
Yep.
anti lag tech or stuff, and that's only the beginning of it. that to have that all built into one unit like that, it helps with lag, but that's not the full
No.
explanation. There's a lot
Well,
going on behind the scenes to make sure that that car has no turbo lag with a turbo that size or
yeah.
two turbos
And
that
when we
size.
get in, and when we get into the details of it, it's pretty cool. Like I said, I did a deep dive this week on the LT7. So
So one question I want to address really quick. Larry Anthony says the ZR1 oil changes will require pulling the engine out of the car. No, I highly doubt that.
no,
I don't
GM's not
see
going to get into that.
Well, not only that, I don't see much changing under the car that would
Right.
require any kind of different. Honestly, the oil change process will probably be almost identical to the Z06
It
because
should be.
a lot of the engine in the ZR1 is based off of the Z06. A lot of it is, not all of it. And I've got a lot of questions about this because I was obviously very vocal about the fact that I didn't love the idea of forced induction on a flat plane crank engine. If you guys watch the videos from GM, the ones where GM's literally talking to the YouTubers or however it's going, they replaced and changed a lot of things on this engine from the LT6 to make this work.
Right.
It wasn't
Yeah.
just take twin turbos and slap it on an LT6 and now you got
Right.
an LT7. There is thicker forged titanium internal parts. The majority of them are thicker than they are on the Z06. They lowered the RPM from 8,600 down to 8,000 to make sure. And Tadge said that this is not linear. Like when you take off 600 RPM, it's not just a little bit. It makes a massive
Correct.
reduction in the noise, vibration, harshness, so they can control the engine better and reliably offer warranty. So that alone, without any other conversation, that alone makes a gigantic difference, and that alone makes it a different engine.
Right. Well, it actually, so the more I read it, kind of was going to like some, back channel sources this week. They actually started developing the LT7 the same time they were
Yeah.
developing the LT6. It has the same dry sump oiling, except for they have one more scavenge pump for the turbos, but the block architecture itself is the same.
Yep. Well,
Now, that
what's
means, your drain plugs will be the same,
yeah,
like all of that stuff should be the same.
what's
We'll get
interesting
into the
about that
details.
What's interesting about that though is that it does have an extra oil scavenge pump, but that extra oil scavenge pump is on the LT6. It just doesn't have gears in
Correct.
it. So
Correct.
they kind of left it there for us to find. No one found it because no one really took
Nope.
the time to tear into the engine because we can't tune it. But if we were able to tune this engine, someone would have noticed that and be like, I wonder what that's about, and probably been able to come up to the conclusion that it was four turbos on the LT7.
Yep.
But
And they made this week, and I don't know if it was Tadge or if it was one of the senior powertrain people, but they made no mistake of telling somebody who then reposted. But they said that they really were developing the LT7 at the exact same time they were
yeah,
developing the LT6. So they had plans all along for
yeah,
this to be forced induction, but they did some of the things like you were saying, and the big ones, which again, I guess we're into it now, but the big ones were lowering the RPMs, obviously, because it is not linear, right? But the other thing is the compression ratio. It's not 12.5 to 1, it's 9.8 to 1.
9. Yep. And
Huge difference.
that is the biggest
Huge
difference
difference.
right there. And again, rewinding months now, we've been talking about this for months where I was saying they're either going to lower the displacement or they're going to lower the compression ratio. And there it is.
Correct.
Dropping it from 12 to 9, that's gigantic because if you throw twin turbos on a car that's already at 12 compression ratio with 8,600 RPM, I don't know, man. That doesn't sound like a reliable kind of situation to me, but
You couldn't pull it off at that level. You could
no.
run 4, 6,
Right.
maybe 8 pounds of boost on
Yep.
like ridiculous fuel, but you're not gonna be the fact that they pulled off 1,064 horsepower on pump gas. Bro, like that's insane. And this compression ratio of 9.8 to 1. Some of you guys may or may not remember, the big dog for years way back in the day, the 0304 Cobras with the superchargers on them. They did the same thing with them. They dropped the compression ratio to like 9.5 to 1,
Yeah.
and then you could just throw a bunch of boost at it. You
Yep.
could even take the supercharger off and put twin turbos on it. You can make 1,000 on pump gas just like that.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
it's a big difference for the static compression to change it because it's dynamic, right? It's going to change with boost and RPM,
Right.
but the static
Right.
compression of nine, I think this was 9.8 to 1 or 9.6 to 1. I mean, like
Yep.
that's the only way they're pulling this off, other than some insane tuning that has to
Well,
be
and
done.
we already know based on some of the pictures that we've seen that this car is going to run at least at on the high end at least 18 psi. It's actually
So yes,
screenshotted in one of GM's press releases. So 18
so
18 psi
yeah,
is that's pretty significant. That's no little
it
amount of
is.
boost.
It's actually, and I talked about it in my video, but they actually are not. They're set up for a nominal 20 pounds of boost, is
Yeah.
what the actual boost is going to be. But they have an overboost function, so
Yeah.
they have an overboost function that's going to go to 24 psi to compensate for when the heat goes up. Again, like the engineering in this car is
Oh yeah,
crazy. So
it's
like
massive.
when you would normally pull timing and lose heat, or for your heat, you would pull time and lose
Right.
power because of heat. They're going to give you a little bit more boost up to 24 psi. So they're putting 24 psi, 24 psi on
So
a
that's that
factory offering with a warranty.
that really means you're not really ever going to feel heat soak in this car, because even whenever it does start to
Never.
soak, it's just going to create more boost pressure. Um,
Yes.
Dr. Corvette's saying, are we going to have blue calipers to go with that ZR1? I'm pretty sure they've already confirmed that we will. I've seen um, the parts catalog that suggests that we are getting blue calipers. I'm surprised it's not on their visualizer yet, but that visualizer's super, super
It's
limited right now.
yeah.
It's just like exterior color and aero package and wheel color. That's pretty much all you can really change.
And that's
Um,
kind of been a hallmark of the ZR1s, right? The blue calipers.
Yeah, and
You know,
that's why we got the edge blue wheels that they
exactly.
showed us, and the blue stitching on the interior. We're definitely going to get blue calipers. I highly doubt
Exactly.
that
Well, you've
they'll
got the
pass it.
blue, and I don't know if I'm a fan yet of the crinkle finish on it, but you got the blue engine cover that
Yeah,
is a throwback to the ZR1s of old, where you had the blue engine covers. So we're gonna get blue calipers,
yeah.
100%, 100%.
Robert Brunn says to change the plugs might be an engine out job. I can't remember if it is currently or not, but it probably would be on this engine. If not, you got to remove a lot of stuff, because the turbo down, or the intake pipes that run to the turbos, the cooling of the turbos, which the water to air coolers are actually on the engine block right here. So it's like, you got your blue cover here, and then the cooler is right here. So like a lot of this stuff is going to have to be removed to even access the spark plugs.
Right. And again, I can say from being in the engine bay of the current vehicle a lot, the way that is set up is going to be a nightmare to chain plugs. Although
Yeah,
I do like the fact that they have the intercooler bricks up on the thing. It takes me back to the old Vortec days where they
yeah.
had the intercooler. That was the one. Like, man, all this stuff is taking me back to like old school racer stuff. But I mean, they just killed it. But the plug thing is also going to be a problem because it's direct and port injected, right? You have 16 plugs in there. So you go back to the same with the ZR1. Like it's a nightmare to
No,
change
see
16
this
plugs.
the ZR1, the C701 does not have two plugs per cylinder. It's still only one.
Oh, it doesn't?
Right.
Okay.
So, and
Yeah,
I
so
think this one will be the same. If I had to guess, this
no.
engine, no, did they
This
say
one
two?
has 16 plugs.
Oh, does it?
Yep. Yep, this one has 16 plugs. So
Huh.
it's got 16 injectors in it. And what it does is that it'll run the port injection when you're idling or just pooping around, and then it slowly turns both sets on, but then at full boost, you're getting all of them. So you've got all 16 wailing away. So yeah, it
Well,
does.
no,
It
I'm
has
talking about
dual.
spark plugs.
Oh no, plugs. No, sorry, I meant injectors. My bad.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I was
No,
gonna,
it's only.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
it
this,
doesn't have the dual plugs. No, my
okay,
bad.
so the the ZR1 has dual port injection
It's
and
still
direct
gonna be a
injection.
pain in the butt to get to because,
Oh
like you
yeah,
said, you're gonna have to take all of that off.
yeah.
It is not gonna be easy to get to. It's gonna be up, and you won't have to pull the motor, but you're gonna the intake where the cooling is over the turbos. That's gonna have to come off
You're not gonna have
100%.
to pull the motor, but you're gonna wish that
No,
you did.
you're not gonna want to do it in your garage. I'm gonna tell you
Yeah.
that much right now. Like unless you have a weekend and you've got some serious constitution about you, you're not gonna want to do that
All right,
yourself.
guys, we got 230 people in here watching. If you could please smash the thumbs up button, I'd love to hit 100 by 8 o'clock, which is about 10 minutes. We got enough people in here. We could easily hit 200 right now if you guys just smash the thumbs up. We're going to be talking about the ZR1 all night tonight, minus one topic that we'll bring up that is kind of all C8s. But the important question here comes from Aaron, AARPM. He says, okay, Justin, the real question, will you try to get one? The answer to that is most likely yes. I'm still waiting on pricing, and we're going to speculate a little bit on pricing here in a minute. But if the pricing of the car is right and it makes sense for me, yes, because you guys know I had two prerequisites. It had to be flat plane crank. That box is checked. The next one, it's got to be under 230K fully loaded. We'll
Right.
see. If that
And
box gets
that's
checked,
exactly the same box I'm in, man. Like
yeah.
I'm just waiting on the pricing. I'm on, just because I have my thresholds as well. But man, the boxes this thing checks now. I mean, we're not talking supercar territory anymore. This is hypercar
Yeah,
territory.
it
This
skips
is yeah, yeah. This
supercar
is like
territory.
quantum.
Supercar territory was the Z06.
Correct.
Hypercar is, I mean, this thing is easily putting out horsepower of hypercars. And there's a potential that it's going to be limited production. And if it is, it's even more of a hypercar.
Right.
But
well, and again, the performance numbers, like all we know now is it'll do at least 215 miles an hour. They're saying at least.
See,
and then they're saying
this was
well below 10-second quarter mile. Like
this
well
was something
below
that
what
was
the guy
kind of
said.
leaked earlier on, was that this car had a top speed of 220 miles an hour. I should have guessed at that point that this car was going to have ridiculous horsepower, because
Yeah.
you can't, you one of two things have to happen to hit 200 and over 200 miles an hour. Either you severely adjust the aero of the car,
Right,
or you throw a bunch of horsepower at it. So, and I knew we've already seen the aero of the car. The only difference really was the big wing for the ZTK package.
well, and the 220 mile an hour run is not going to be
the
a
low
ZTK
wing
car.
Yeah.
Yep. It'll be the low wing car all day long, because that,
well, they
to
said
go from 215 to 220, the amount of physics you have to overcome is like driving a billboard down the highway. Like it's
they
a
said
lot.
GM already said that their high top speed run, which was I don't know if they said the numbers, but it was likely 220 plus, was the
Right.
low wing, but the
Yep.
high wing was hitting 215, I think. Or
Right, but that's
no.
what they're saying, at least 215 miles. There's that video on where GM takes down, just blows over 200 like it's nothing.
Yep.
Nothing.
So I want to try to get through some of these comments, but Keith said it's weird how no one guessed that the ZR1 specs, and that's as good as that's a good thing, as it means Chevy is keeping us on our toes. Now here's the funny thing about this. With the C8 Stingray, we knew, if you go back, rewind way back in my channel, you can watch some of the news videos I was putting out on the C8 Stingray. We knew everything. I knew what engine was going to be in there. I knew what suspension was going to be in there. I knew what the car was going to look like close to 2 years before it ever even existed. GM couldn't keep their lips shut on that one. Oh, the Z06, same thing. I knew 99% of the specs before the car was out, 2 or 3 weeks before it was out. The ZR1, I could not find anybody that would confirm anything outside of these two guys that I have that are they're not even inside GM, but they're really close to GM. They basically produce parts for GM on their future cars. And these two guys were never wrong about anything. One guy said flat plane crank guaranteed. The other guy said cross plane. They tried flat plane and it wouldn't work. And these two guys were never wrong about anything, but one of them was wrong. So it leads me to believe that they were probably playing with different engines at one point and landed on a flat plane crank. And ADX actually asked Tadge this in his video. He said, were you guys ever thinking about doing a cross plane crank? And Tadge went right around that question, never answered it. Yeah. So I bet the answer is yes.
Oh, I'm sure they did. And kind of segueing into some of the development stuff and the real techie stuff that I've just been, really nerding out on this week. The horsepower numbers, right? Everybody kept saying, 850. So the one GM senior engineer for the engine program was saying, our target is always more than the last, right? 650 something in the C6, 755 in the C7. Their legit goal, GM's legit goal, was 850, give or take, right? But what happened was when they were running the motor on the engine dyno at 850, the wastegates were open like 90% of the time. And they're like, wait a minute, we're not even making boost and we're making 850. So they're like, all right, well, let's go for 900.
Yeah.
And then they went for 900 and then it was 950. And then somebody in the room goes, well, the Dodge Demon makes 1,025. So they're like, okay, well, we need to make 1,026.
Yep.
So that was their goal initially. Then was like, okay, well, we got to beat the Demon. And then they're like, whoa, we just dropped 1,064.
I think it's hilarious.
Rebuild their dyno.
I think it's hilarious how many awesome stories from GM start with, well, we accidentally, because the C7 ZR1 accidentally broke the record at Virginia International Raceway of the Ford GT while they were just driving around the track warming up the tires, and they accidentally broke their record. Then they put the C8 ZR1 on the dyno and accidentally create way more horsepower than they ever thought they were going to. And just like Robert Brunn said and David touched on, it was breaking their dyno. It was creating so much power that they literally couldn't accurately dyno this thing without breaking things. So
Well, and I can only imagine just being a car guy. Like these guys are next level car guys, but sitting in the room and looking at it, and everybody looks at each other when they realize there's another, 200, 300 horsepower on the table. The look on their faces, they're like, "Let's do it."
yeah,
A couple of evil smiles and just turn up the dial and let's see what happens.
yeah. Yeah, so Professor Corvette said, remember Rick Conti's sneak picture? It was of the engine. Yep. My problem with that though is that I also remember Rick Conti saying we weren't going to see this car, and he was guaranteeing we were not going to see this car at the reveal. We saw.
Well, we saw it. I mean, it
Um,
wasn't much of a reveal, but man, was it? I mean, the numbers and that's the big mic drop, right? Like Chevy walks
100%.
out, 1,064 horsepower, mic drop, and they just walk off the stage. They just put Ferrari, Lambo, McLaren. They just put everybody on blast.
And that's the thing. When you come out
1,064.
with numbers like that, do you
Right.
really need to have a great reveal? I mean,
No,
not
that
not
is the
saying I
reveal.
wouldn't even necessarily say that the reveal wasn't good. My problem is that the reveal was so good with the C8 Z06. We just
Right.
expected it was going to be something like that again, and it wasn't. So
Well, and
we
the
felt
all-time best,
disappointed.
the all-time best reveal was the Dodge Demon, where they did the drag through the inside, and the fireworks were going off in
Yeah,
flames where
yeah.
they had it. I was like, okay, that's
Well,
that's a cool
didn't they
reveal.
helicopter that thing down in? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I
It's
mean,
just like
Dodge
okay,
always has been good at just blasting
but
new products on the internet. But
those numbers are all you need, man. I mean,
yeah,
that is legit
so
hypercar mic drop.
Joe's Garage, who I've actually met down in Florida, he asks, so if you're able to get one, do you mod it or do you leave it stock? I know the answer to this, but what do you think, David?
I mean, be honest with you, it's hard for me not to tinker anything and leave. I mean, like I can't. I can't. I mean, it's a disease, but you know, what I mean, you're probably the same boat, right? You're gonna mod it. Like you may
So
not go like over the top, but you're gonna
right,
mod
I
it.
would do the same kind of mods I've done on my Z06. I would do an
Right.
intake, cats probably, and some sort of exhaust. I don't really go crazy on any of my cars as far as throwing turbo kits on and stuff. I contemplated doing it with the Z06, and I still might, depending on how some things work out. But ultimately, it's always intake exhaust for me. And I would still do that with the ZR1
Yeah.
because the ZR1 doesn't sound as good as the Z06, and there's no way,
Right.
there's literally nothing you can do to fix that. It's
No.
never going to sound as good as the Z06 because those turbos, even though they're
Yeah.
creating ridiculous power, they're muffling the exhaust. There's just no way around it.
Correct. Yeah, and I'm the same way. Like if I end up getting one when my number comes up, um, I'm gonna have a hard time. Like, and again, think about like, what do you need? It's not like I need more power. It's 1,000 horsepower from the
Right.
factory. Like, I mean, it's not like I'm like, oh, I wish I had more. Right? Like, if you ever driven a legitimate 1,000 horsepower
Yeah,
car, nobody
no.
says
You're
that.
wishing you had more brakes.
Right? Nobody says that. Nobody goes, well, a
Yeah.
thousand's a lot, but yeah,
Well,
nobody
a
says that.
thousand is a ridiculous amount of horsepower. I
It
mean, it's
is.
that simple. This when this thing came out and they dropped 1,064, I was like, how are you gonna do that? Like rear wheel
Yep.
drive. And me and David were just talking about this off camera. How are you going to put 1,064 horsepower to the ground on the same size tires that the Z06 has? Because I have a Z06, David has a Z06. We know if you smash the gas in that car in second, third, fourth, fifth gear, it doesn't matter. You're going to break the
Yeah.
rear end loose. So
Traction's an issue.
how does GM take that car, which
Yep.
traction's an issue on, throw 400 more horsepower at it and
Right.
have good traction? Like it just doesn't make sense. But there is a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. They have their hands full with playing with the electronic traction control. The wastegate on the turbo are electronically controlled, so they can have those things wide open during hard launches in first and second gear, where it's just dumping horsepower out and you don't even realize it. But
Right.
they need to really focus on getting that power to the ground, which means there's going to be a lot of traction control
Well,
intervening.
and you and I talked about it before off things. So one of the things I was reading this week too is that the torque is limited in first and second gear, right? So
Yeah.
they're limiting the amount of power the motor's giving you from a torque perspective in first and second gear so that you can, get that power down, ramp it up and get going, and that's always one of the benefits of a turbo car versus a supercharger car, right? Like your ZR1, my Challenger, like you have these positive displacement motors, you get all the torque all at once,
Right.
right? It's just this hit. Whereas when it's these turbos, you can really ramp that in much more smoothly, so you have a chance to get that power down. But I thought that was awesome how they have basically the torque control for first and second gear just to get it out of the hole. Of course, like you said, there's all kinds of other things. They upgraded the transmission, and the transmission tuning itself has been reworked, a million
What
times. But
what did they upgrade on the transmission? What have you heard?
so actually, yeah, a lot actually. So the input and output shafts are upgraded. The clutch packs are upgraded. So they
Okay.
have, and not just upgraded, they have beefier input and output shafts, right? So those are upgraded. They have beefier clutches themselves, and then they have better lines for higher clutch pressures. So kind of like when you had Alex on and he was talking about higher clutch
Yeah.
pressures for more pressure.
Yep.
GM's actually done that with bigger lines, better pumps, and obviously the tuning, but short of the housing itself, the DCT and the ZR1 is a whole nother animal because the input output shafts, the clutch packs, everything itself, it's a whole different animal.
Good.
So you could, which is good for us because that
Yeah.
means in the future we're going to be able to get some of these performance parts
Yep.
and put them in Z06s and upgrade. But right now it's not the same DCT. It's
Okay.
got way better internals.
That's good to know for sure. Bill Miller says that oil capacity on the ZR1 is still 8 quarts, and this is the same for the Z06, approximately 7.5 quarts in the dry sump.
Yep.
I've been looking for this information to see if number one, if the capacity was the same, but number two, if they're going to use the same oil, the 5W50 supercar oil, because I just bought like 24 quarts of it just so I have it sitting around, and now I'm sitting there thinking, well, that sucks if it takes a different oil and I sell my Z06.
No, the capacity is the same, and they're still recommending the supercar oil.
Good to know.
Yep. So, and the capacity seem like you said, we both said the scavenge pump is already there
Yeah.
in the Z06. So there's not like you're filling in an extra reservoir or anything like that. You're literally, it's just the same displacement as far as how much oil. It's the same amount of oil. It's the same oil they're recommending. You may have some different interval changes, especially like the first couple because of heat, turbos, those type of things.
Yeah.
Because the enemy, and we got some really smart people in our comment section, but the enemy of the oil is heat and RPMs, like heat and friction, right?
Yep.
And you're going to have a lot of both.
Yep.
Because if you're going to 8,000 RPMs and you're making 1,900 degrees of heat,
Yeah.
you may have some early oil changes.
Professor Corvette says not limited, just low production. We got a question from Green Rush saying, is the ZR1 going to be limited? And I agree with Professor Corvette. It's not limited. It's going to be low production. Now, if you think about this in the grand scheme of things, we got the Stingray starting at roughly 70 grand now. We got the E-Ray at around a little over 100. And now the Z06. This blew me away the other day. I logged in and built a Z06. It starts at 112 grand.
Right.
But anyway, the ZR1 is very likely to start at 150 or 160.
That's what I call it.
That's my speculation on it. And if it does, that right there by itself, even before you check any boxes, that prices it out of most people's reach. So,
but that's 150 without options.
Without anything.
200.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You're 200, no problem. No problem.
And that's what I'm saying is even the 150 or 160, that prices it out of people's reach right there. But when you start adding options, you're over 200. Now, keep in mind here that majority of the people that are coming to the website to build the car or going to their dealership, most of them are choosing a Stingray at this point because of the price. So when you have a ridiculously expensive car like the ZR1, not that many people are going to choose that option. All of the big dealerships that I've talked to about this have all said the same thing. We don't see a gigantic demand for the ZR1. And I agree. I don't think there's going to be a rush on the ZR1 the way that there was on the Z06. I'm not saying you're not going to see people wanting to buy them or people getting them. The demand, the rush, the absolute craziness is not going to be there as much as it was with the Z06 because this is an expensive car. So GM is going to purposely make less of them to not interfere with the production of the cars that they are selling, like the Stingray, E-Ray, and Z06. Because if they make 100 ZR1s in a day, that limits how many other Z06s or C8s they can make in that same day. And those cars are making them more money than the ZR1's going to make them. So it is going to be a lower production car. I don't want to say that it's going to be super low, but it's going to be lower than the Z06. It's going to be way lower than the Stingray. It's going to be a lower production.
Yeah, and a friend of mine and I were talking too. He owns it's not a Chevy dealership, but he owns a car dealership. And we were talking the other day. His prediction is ZR1 pricing drops and Z06 sales go up. for
Yeah.
that very reason. People are going to be
Yep.
like, nope, I'm out.
Yep.
And
It's
then
too
they go ahead
much.
with their order
Right.
on the Z06. That's what he
It's
said. He's like, I guarantee you, as soon as that pricing drops, Z06 orders go up.
and
100%.
especially since there is now two companies putting out a twin turbo kit for the C8 Z06. So if you really want to go
Right.
nuts with this, now that we fully understand that the engine is somewhat similar to the one in the ZR1, if you want to go crazy with it and you want to put a twin turbo kit on your car, there's two companies out there now doing it. We talked to Alex, he's only one of them.
Yep.
There's another company, Boost District, is also doing it. And if you want to save yourself some money and get a car that looks 99% the same as a ZR1, you could save yourself some money in getting the Z06 and putting a turbo kit, or even just what I did, the intake, the cats, and
Yep.
I mean that
Yep.
car is more than enough.
Oh,
No
it's
one,
fast. Yeah,
no one
they are
needs
fast.
1,000 horsepower, but at the same time,
Yeah.
we want it.
Right.
I don't care if
Well,
you
and
need it
too,
or
like the amount of tech though, man. Like so, I'm gonna kind of counterpoint you on this one in that being somebody who's always built stuff, who's always said, you know what, why would I pay for that when I can build my own? This, they have already CNC ported the heads on the ZR1, right? Which
exactly.
is what Brandon and I've been talking like, man, if you open these heads up, you can do this. They have titanium rods, lower compression ratio. They've got specific, more aggressive cams. The stuff that we had been talking about that we would do as racers or like mechanics, cams, heads, all of this stuff that's like the typical Corvette mod stuff. They've already done it for you.
Yeah.
So I mean, what are these kits? These kits are like 40 grand plus with these
No,
turbo
the one
kits.
from Boost District starts at 25.
Okay. Well, so okay, even 25, I might be in it for 25, but you're still only going to get
Yeah.
6, 8 pounds of boost in it
You're
because the static
you're
compression ratio
roughly,
is too
and
much.
this was the thing that I talked with Alex that one time he was on here. His kit, what it adds to the Z06 power wise, would put you right around 850.
Right.
So that's where the difference came in. When GM really started building this engine with stronger internals and stuff, that's when they realized, well, wait a second, we can up this horsepower. Like, because 850-ish is about your limit on the LT6. And even that, is still up for debate as to whether or not
Yep.
that's safe. But guys, we got 262 people in here watching and only 150 thumbs up. So let's get to
Yeah, let's get
200
this thumbs up,
ASAP.
guys.
Yeah. We're talking
Come on,
about the car that
we're
everybody
giving
wants to
it
talk
all
about.
today.
So,
We're giving you all the information today.
yeah, smash the thumbs up, guys. Let's get to
You know,
200 ASAP.
and I see too, like I see some crazy guys down the road because I'm kind of one of those crazy guys. I'm not saying I would do it, but I see guys down the road when you get more reliable means to tune this, even if it's like how Alex is doing it with pull and timing based on tricking the computer, whatever, or somebody unlocks it. I see guys buying ZR1 short blocks or buying ZR1 internals and just putting their own turbos on it and going nuts with it. I see that, right? I really do, because you'll be able to, it's going to be the tuning is the problem, because you're going to be able to buy the ZR1 clutches, the ZR1 intake shafts. You're going to be able to buy all that stuff. You're going to be able to buy the short block. Like you can buy a Z06 short block like right now for like 20 grand.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine there's not going to be some guy that is as crazy as Brandon and I are, that has more money than we do, that would just do that and be like, hold my beer
So
and watch what I'm about to do.
one of the questions here, Darren Burnett says, did you guys see the video where Tadge said they started with the top and basically reverse engineered down to the Stingray? They had already built the ZR1 and Zora. This is hilarious because if you rewind roughly a year and a half ago, I said this same thing because
Right.
it's the only way this makes sense. Because how do you bring out a C8, a brand new architecture of car, and you bring it out in the Stingray form and it's fully capable of handling 495 horsepower, but that same frame has to also handle 1200? How can you
Right.
do that without adding things to the frame as you go, unless you already know that frame's good for 1200 horsepower because you've already reverse engineered it? It
Well, and they
has to be
also
that way.
confirmed it. Yeah, and they also confirmed it when they said they were building the LT7 when they were building the
Right.
LT6.
Yeah.
Right, like that confirms all of it right there, then and they're done. Right,
Yep.
confirmed.
It has to be this way because you have to know that the car's going to handle your top dog as
Yeah,
well as the entry
yeah.
level car.
You have to know the limits of the platform, and then it's very easy to plan the limits, and then like he said, reverse engineer back to the Stingray, which is 450 or 495 horsepower. No problem.
Yeah, Bill Miller says the boost gauge goes to 30 psi, and I thought I saw a video with the boost at 25 psi on the gauge. Yeah, David actually said they have an overboost function that goes to
Yep.
24. Did you say? or 25?
Yep, 24. Yeah, that's what
Okay.
GM says. I mean, I'm sure you might read 25 once in a while, but like,
It
so
depends on
20 will
sea
be the,
level. It's going to change a
yeah,
little bit.
20 will be the nominal boost, right? Is what they're going to send it to you with. Is going to be your max boost is 20, but it has an overboost function that will go up to 24 based on the heat. So that way you're not losing horsepower. So, and then I can't wait to talk about the anti-lag. Like it's genius, genius, genius,
Uh,
genius.
let me see. There was a question here I wanted to address. Boy, I'm pretty far back on these questions. I apologize, guys. Um,
Yeah, and I
oh
don't
yeah.
have my
So
comments, so I'm sorry, guys.
somebody said something about what I think the MSRP is going to be, and that's going to be quite a discussion here by itself. But ultimately, I think this car is going to start right around 150 to 160 before options. After you go through and you check all the cool boxes, you're at about 215 to 220. At least I'm hoping, because if he goes much higher than that, I'm out. But yeah, I think
Yeah,
150 to
that's spot
160
on.
is a pretty good base
Yeah,
price.
that's spot on. I agree. Yeah, that's where I'm calling it. Is like 150 is where I'm calling it.
Yeah, and the thing is like if you if you look at their pricing in the past, it fits in the lineup pretty well at 150 to
Exactly.
160 because you can max out a Z06 right now and you can hit 200.
Oh
So
yeah. Oh yeah.
if you go for the Z0 or ZR1 starting at 150 or 160 and you're already planning on maxing out as a Z06, then all of a sudden that price looks okay, you know?
Right. Well, and also too, I mean, like, it depends. If you want the Halo car with the Halo options with all the things, right? I mean, you can option this car out easily 230, 240.
Yeah.
I mean, just the same options you would put on your Z06.
Yep.
Take that,
Yep.
60
And
grand,
that's what
70
I
grand, and
want.
boom.
That's what I
Yep.
want.
And again,
I don't want a lesser. If I go from the Z06 to the ZR1, I want the exact same car only with the more horsepower setup. Like I
right.
don't want to go. Oh, I can't afford the 3L LZ anymore. And that's another weird thing. On GM's website, they're referring to this car now as a 1LZ or a 3LZ. There's no 2LZ, which there never was, but it used to be called ZR.
ZR.
But they're
Right.
on
Three
GM's
ZR.
website. It's 1LZ
Yeah, it
and a
was three.
3LZ.
Yeah, it was three ZR, one ZR.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it was always exactly the LT, LZ, and ZR.
yeah.
Yep,
I wonder
yep.
why they changed
Because it
that.
was the three ZR ZTK is like the package on your car.
So the only reason I mean, just quick speculating here. The only reason I could see that they changed that is because they want to save the ZR for Zora.
Maybe. Well, and the question, and I don't know if anybody's asking anything that I have specifically for you, Justin, is your ZR1. It comes in at the right price. You get it spec'd out, and the price is right. Is it the exact same spec as your Z06?
um,
Or do you go off and you go new color? Do you do new like let me know because that's what I was thinking about the other day is does he have mashings? Because I am that weird guy where I would
yeah,
want matching, but I couldn't get it because they don't make carbon flash anymore. So
I
for
uh,
me,
I want. It, someone asked me this the other day. The only way that I differ from my normal thing because I want it to. If I get a C8 ZR1, I want it to match my C7 ZR1.
there you
And
go.
the only way I differ on that is if GM does some sort of craziness and actually gives us a nice green.
Right.
If they bring out like a Verde Ithaca style green or lizard green from Porsche, something like that, I'm getting green. But other
And
than that, no, I
I'm
get black.
actually hoping my allocation wouldn't come up 2025 because I'm actually wanting to see what colors they bring
Yeah,
out in 2026. Now, me, this is no secret. Anybody that's ever watched this, 99.9% since I can't get carbon flash to match, it would be a Sebring orange
Sebring
car.
orange.
That
Yeah,
is my favorite color. And if I were gonna drop the money on a 2019 ZR1, it would be an M7 Sebring orange ZTK car. That would be the one I would get. So I'm kind of though hoping that I have more options if it comes out to a 2026, maybe
yeah.
because
Well,
there's nothing wrong.
there's rumor that the 2026 will have an interior redesign as well, but MDK says the question or has a question or a statement that I also fully agree with. He says, when people see the insurance rates on the ZR1, it's going to be another reason to choose the Z06. I was thinking about that earlier. How are they going to insure a car with this much horsepower? Especially if you're a younger person. Like, we'll say some
You
20 some
won't
year
if you're
old.
a younger person.
Good God. I mean, your insurance is going to be $700, $800. No, probably 2-3 grand a month on top of the fact that you just spent 200 grand on a car.
Yeah, it's gonna be insane. It'll be like the Dodge Demons and stuff like that, which is even more because the Dodge Demons are easy to steal. So like you don't park your Hellcat or your Demon or your Red Eye in Atlanta and it lasts. Like you don't go in and get groceries. You come out, it's gone. But the insurance rates, even if you did something like an NCM or a Haggerty's or something where you're going to keep it locked in your garage, you're not going to, the miles are kept under 1,000 a year, like the most minimal thing ever, it's still going to be a lot because it
Yeah.
has 1,000 horsepower and
And
it's
that's
a
the thing
200
is,
something thousand dollar
if
car.
you're going to get this car and you're going to go with the cheapest possible insurance, it's probably going to be NCM Insurance will probably hook you up the most. But even then, when I was at the bash, NCM Insurance told me the C7 ZR1 and currently the C8 Z06 are their two most expensive cars to insure.
Expensive cars.
That's
That's
going to
right.
change whenever the C8 ZR1 comes out because that's going to be the new one. But um, Darren Burnett says, anybody talking about getting a non ZTK car? Um, Me and David just kind of discussed that quickly by saying that basically, if you get the non ZTK, you're getting a car that a lot of people are going to confuse with a Z06 because the non ZTK, really the only defining feature is the hood. And then, especially if you get the convertible, because then there's no split
No
window
split
either.
window. Right.
So you're really limiting. And not only that, another thing with the convertible is that you get less cooling to the engine, so less air intake. That is going to end up being a problem, I bet, in the future. I feel like that is an issue right off the bat. And I bet you GM does something that none of us would ever even see happening unless we can tune this car. Even if it's just slight, it's going to be slightly detuned, I bet, to fill the gap of the extra or lack thereof extra cooling for the convertible model.
That's a pretty good point. Yeah, and I just don't see it being that the Z06 is so similar, right? Like if you take the ZTK pack off of your C7,
It's
right?
still very
And
different, yeah.
it is way different. Whereas if you take the ZTK off, the split window and the front, I don't think are enough
Yeah.
to just really make it that much of a difference, in my opinion.
A lot of
Um,
people are saying the same thing because they're almost aggravated, and I am too. As a Z06 owner, I was kind of irked a little bit whenever the E-Ray came out with the same body, but then I was kind of quickly
the
reminded that
Grand Sport,
it's supposed to be the Grand Sport, and the Grand Sport was
right?
always that way. And I said, okay, I get that. But now the ZR1 too, like, and if the Zora comes out, it probably will as well. And then there's talk of a possible Grand Sport, which will also have the same wide body. It's like
Right.
all of them are going to look the same except for the Stingray. The Stingray is going to be the outlier
The
at that
Stingray will
point.
be the outlier.
Yeah,
Exactly.
like that's.
Exactly.
I hope they don't do that. They need to switch up. If the Zora does in fact come out, and so does the Grand Sport, both of those need to look different.
Well, and back to the ZTK, like, from a performance standpoint, like nobody's going to be going 200 miles an hour where it's going to be a limited thing. Like nobody's doing that. And if you're tracking your car, I can say from, just driving the regular car with the regular package without the Z07 package, it's way more car than anybody that's watching this will be able to handle. Like if you're not a
Oh yeah,
professional driver, you're not going to go, oh, I'm going to get 2 more seconds out of this car from having the ZTK. No, you're not.
no.
Like this car is way more than you can ever handle. So
This and I keep telling everybody this because they're asking me, "Oh, do you want to get this? Do you want to get that?" I'm like, let me make something clear here. Nobody needs this car.
no,
I mean,
no,
if
no,
you
no.
if we want to get real nitty gritty, nobody needs the Z06. We
Right,
barely need the Stingray. It's
right.
not about need. None of this is
But
about need.
no, and the Stingray is, and we keep forgetting, right? Because the Z06 is
Yeah,
so good, the E-Ray is so good, the ZR1 is insane. Like how good the base Stingray car, it changed the game.
a hundred
Like, it
percent.
really, for what you
Yep.
got, car of the year, absolutely when it came out, like it just changed the game. They just continued, like you said. I mean, I don't know how, from the experience I have of driving my car, they put another 400
I
horsepower on it.
know.
I don't even
I
I can't wrap my mind. And I have fast cars, man,
yeah.
but I'm just there's no
Well,
way
it's
until you
different.
experience it.
It's different for you taking a fast car, what was already a fast car, and building it to be even faster. That's different than what we're getting here because
Right.
this is a warranted,
With a warranty.
yeah, this is a warranty capable
Exactly.
car. Like that
Exactly.
by itself's insane. But someone brought up a point here, and I've talked about this before with the C8 Z06 when before it came out, everybody, and I mean, I got good word from a fairly good inside source at GM that this car, the C8 Z06 was going to start at 89,995. It also obviously ended up coming out at 106, which was way higher than anybody speculated. But if you watch the original Jay Leno video, whenever he was first in the C8 Z06, he asks the person in the passenger side seat, which I can't remember his name now, but it's one of the big guys at GM, what the price of this car was going to start at, and he says well under $100,000. That was before the
Yeah.
car was out. So
Right.
initially, the price of that car was $89,995. They realized
Right.
really quickly that's underpriced. Let's boost this thing. They charged 106 for it. So everybody was wrong, guessing way low on the price. And Switch Lane says he's kind of thinking the same thing. He says, I'm thinking 198K is reasonable. 160K is optimistic. I could see them doing this just because everybody across the internet is speculating 150 to 160. I could see GM coming out and throwing a curveball and saying, yeah, 199.9.
And
And
they
if
may honestly, the marketing money people may say, you know what, let's see what the internet starts to say, and whatever the internet says, we'll tag 20 G's on. Like you never know what these guys, you know, they can say,
it
let's see
would
what
not
they say.
surprise me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing
So
is this is another way. If they did this, if they brought it out at 198 or 199, this is another way for them to limit production, because the
right,
people that are going to buy that are the people that can afford it. The people that can only afford the Z06 are going to get the Z06 still, which that car, at the end of the day, the Z06 is going to make them more money than the ZR1 will, even at 199, because there's way more into that ZR1 than there was into the
right,
Z06 or to the E-Ray or to the Stingray. Like the Stingray is where all of their money's at. They're making the
right.
most money on the Stingray sales because they put not as much R&D into it.
Well, you know,
So
and it's one of those things too when you're talking about the R&D, like, you know, the ZR1, like you said, I mean, we're talking about this as a warranty car, you know, the 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 lag reduction, right, or the anti-lag in this thing. Like, so when you're driving this car, right, and you let off the throttle, it'll close obviously the throttle, but it opens the wastegates, but it keeps the turbo spooling.
yeah,
So that way the turbos are still spooled. You're just bypassing and blowing off the
yeah.
boost that you're making. And then that way when you get right back into it, the wastegate snaps shut and you're already at boost. Like, you know,
The
racers have been
power's
doing this
always
for
there.
years on the back. Yes, the power's on, because that was one of the things I was worried about at the very first part before I started reading. I was like, oh, two
Turbo
76
lag.
millimeter
Yeah,
turbos. Like there's going to be a lot of turbo lag. Well, you know, now I read with the launch control, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to build boost, but the anti lag, whether you're driving and it closes up and it opens up the wastegates
yeah.
and keeps the turbo spooling. Oh man, dude,
I
that's
think I think it was either Tadge. I don't remember which. I've watched so many ZR1 videos I can't keep them straight anymore. But
right,
one of the videos I watched, they said that basically they did not want you knowing at any point that you're driving a turbocharged car. So that
right.
power is available to you at any point you step on the gas. You're never going to feel turbo lag because, just like David said, those turbos are constantly spooled, ready to go at the drop of a hat. Because they can keep, just like he said, the turbo spooled, wastegates open, so you don't even realize you're in boost until you tap the gas and
Nope,
those wastegates close, and now all of a sudden you're,
bam.
yeah.
And
Um,
somebody leaked a dyno graph. It didn't have the numbers. We already know the numbers, but it was like the curves.
yeah.
And it was not typical turbo
No,
curves
no,
because
there's
the
no lag. Yeah,
wastegate, like, yeah, there's no lag. It was awesome to see that guy. I have to send it to you and you can post it. But it was really cool. I thought, man, these guys nailed it with this.
yeah. So Dylan says, is there any outside info that the Zora is official or will likely happen? So what we're following here, Dylan, is, and this is surprising to me, is that whenever the C8 Stingray first was being talked about, first spy shotted, a document leaked that was supposedly from inside GM talking about all of the performance variants, when they were coming, and roughly how much horsepower they were going to have. That document has been fairly accurate up to this point, and the ultimate car on that document is a Zora. And the Zora was supposed to be the one with 1,000 horsepower. Now, things obviously changed in the last 4 to 5 years since that document leaked. Now we're in a position where we need, quote unquote, need a little bit more horsepower to keep up with the masses. So these numbers change to some degree. But on that list is a ZR1, is a Zora, and is also a Grand Sport. So if that list ends up coming to fruition, we will have all of these models at the end of the C8 lineup.
Well, and even people like Tadge have mentioned Zora. Like, you're not going to talk about it if it's not a thing, right?
Right.
They've mentioned it, you know. And speaking of Tadge,
Wait,
did anybody catch?
I gotta address this. Professional
Go.
Corvette. He says the Zora will now be called the Even Mora. I love it just because it's legit. It's
It
legit.
is legit. It is an all-wheel drive with the extra 200 horsepower. I mean, that's McLaren Senna territory with the powertrain. Now that car doesn't weigh anything, but still. But yeah, no. And did anybody catch the Easter egg of, So on the Z06, there's a little bust, like head bust of Zora on the windshield. Do you know what the bust is of on the ZR1? It's Tadge. That's
So
awesome.
as David's talking, I'm showing the picture here because it is really cool. This is
That is so
I
cool.
legitimately can't think of a better way to be honored on your way out
Right.
than
A
something
hundred
like this.
percent.
Because I mean, this is going to be on all, or no, this is just on the ZR1. But either way,
Zero ones.
this is going to be on someone's car. So someone's going to be driving along with literally a picture of your face on the windshield. I think that's
Yep.
I can't think of a better way to be honored. I really can't. I think that's really cool.
And it makes me wonder too, like, GM in the back rooms, the executives having the meetings, going, what are we going to do to like send Tadge off with this car? And somebody saying, well, let's replace the Zora bust with the
Yeah,
bust of Tadge. Like, it's just cool, man.
it is.
It really is. That's a nice touch.
So Red C8 Z06 says a separate Zora model is dead, maybe as an option to the ZR1. I've been saying that ultimately as a speculation, but now as time goes on, I'm sitting there thinking more and more that that is legit. I think it makes more sense to have the Zora option be a checkbox versus being a whole new car. And I think that helps less or more so with muddying the waters with performance brands. But also, Switch Lane says that Motor One's YouTube channel posted a short of all the hints that Tad's dropped of the higher horsepower version coming next. They
Exactly.
apparently even pointed out a hose with a kink on the end, making space for something that's not there, likely being the frunk E-Ray motor. And
Right.
that's what that's kind of what we were talking about earlier here.
Right.
Uh if you guys haven't seen this, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, where GM was testing the what looked like a ZR1, but it has that vertical radiator in the front that's very obviously cooling a battery pack somewhere. So this
Right.
is the first time where I said, you know what? What if the Zora package is just that? It's a package, not a separate car, because it looks otherwise identical to the ZR1. So why would you release this as an entirely different car when all it really is a ZR1 with a hybrid front motor and maybe some active aero? I don't think that that
Right.
constitutes a new car release. I think that constitutes a performance checkbox, which would still increase demand and increase interest in the ZR1 yet again in a couple
Right.
years.
Well, and again, too, like, I mean, you're putting the Chevy's done the hard work already with the E-Ray, right? The hard work is done. The proof of concept is done. So it's not much for them to say, okay, well, now we just stuff the battery in the front motor up front because we've already done it with the E-Ray. They already know how to integrate all the systems. I mean, so it's not that building from scratch like it would be a full platform, right? Not much more so like the E-Ray was a full platform, right? Whereas they don't have to build it from scratch for proof of concept or a separate model for the zero one. They could just do a checkbox, like you said. So
Yeah. So it looks like Wednesday is Tadge's last day. Now I talked to Tadge at the bash, and he said that
yeah, he's a
he
cool guy.
is he is retiring, but he's not disappearing. He said he is still going to have things to do with GM, just not as the chief executive of Corvette. He's basically going to fade into the background a little bit, but he's still going to be around. He's not
Yeah,
fully retiring, from what he told me.
yeah, he was a really nice guy to talk to. I asked him a question too that he didn't answer, but he smiled at when I said, because GM's always they're already working on C9, right? GM's always 10 years ahead of everything, right? And
Right.
I asked him, "You're retiring, but how much input? Like, how much is your fingerprint going to be on the C9 platform?" And he just smiled. He didn't say anything, but he just
That's
smiled. And I thought to myself, you know what? He probably has a lot more input into the first initial part of the C9 than
yeah.
we will ever really know.
Well, yeah, he's already working on it. Yeah. So I
Yep,
mean,
exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
based on that and what he told me too, he may even still be around in the background even after
He-
that.
But I mean, he wants to retire, but how do you walk away from something like
I have no
that?
idea, man.
You can't,
I
like,
know.
you
I wouldn't
can't.
be able
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, I
Uh,
wouldn't be able to either. I would do it until I died.
Jersey Ras said, I thought they said the ZR1 was going to be production unlimited and they will make as many as people demand, hence why the soft suspension. So Jersey, this is exactly what we were talking about. It's not going to be a limited production. It's going to be basically it's going to be a production demand kind of car. So if
Right.
they have if especially if the price comes out at $199,000, that's going to limit demand right off the bat. So
Right.
a lot of people are going to drop out of the game, say, "No, that's too much," or they can't afford it, whatever the case may be. The 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 production of the car will be limited based on that, based on the horsepower, based on the insurance rates, like MDK said. A lot of this stuff is going to limit production, even if GM themselves don't limit the production.
Right. And they may very well be planning, like my buddy who owns a car dealership said, that when they drop the MSRP, they're ready to crank up E-Ray and Z06 production because people are going to be like, nope, I'm out. And
Yep.
they're going to order their Z06 or they order their E-Ray. And they may just be waiting for that as well. So for them, I don't think it really matters. Every car they sell, they make money on. Done.
Yep. So 2020 Matrix 8, Jeremy says ZR1 has always been top dog. Why take that away with another car? Perfect point. Just makes sense that Zora is a package option. And that's
Exactly.
honestly right there, mic drop. That is
Exactly.
100%. That's all that needs to be said. That pretty much, in my mind at least, confirms that this probably will be a package option versus
Well, and
another car.
they are still saying all their marketing is still saying King of the Hill, right? That was their big thing in the C6 ZR1. The Blue Devil is King of the Hill. 2019, the King of the Hill's back. Now they're like the King of the Hill's back. So they're not going to have something that they've coronated the King of the Hill and then turn around and
Yep.
drop another car. They'll just do an option on it where you'll be saying, "Oh, I have a ZR1 Zora."
Exactly.
Like,
They
so
they
yeah.
may even change the if you check that package, it may even change the name of the car completely where there would be no ZR1 badging on it. It would just say Zora. They may do that. But at the end of the
Maybe.
day, from what I can tell with the spy shots here at least, it's going to look identical. You're not even going to be able to
Exactly.
tell the difference unless you know to look for that vertical radiator.
Well, and I was wrong about the flat plane thing, cost plane plate, but I'll tell you, I think they keep the ZR1. I think they do ZR1 with some type of extra Zora badging or something like that.
Yeah,
I
that's
really do
possible.
because the way they push it with the King of
Yeah.
the Hill, that's their, that's
That's true
always, like
too.
Jeremy
Yeah,
said,
that's
that's
true.
always
Yeah.
been the top dog.
Maybe like a big
And
ZR1 logo with smaller underneath it Zora, like
something, right? Some
yeah.
extra badging somewhere that it's a Zora, right? But because it's going to look the same. I mean, other than like we caught in the spy shots with the battery cooling, it's going to look the same. So, yeah, Jeremy's right though, in my opinion,
Yeah.
that they bill it the King of the Hill. They always have built it the King of the Hill. And if you get this extra option for like the Zora, I think it'll just be some extra badging,
Yep.
and we'll go from there. So.
All right, guys,
Because
we
they've
got
done stuff in the past where they've done Centennial models, they've done
yeah.
427 limited edition, the carbon edition. So we haven't seen that in a long time. So
We have almost 300 people in here watching, guys. Let's smash that thumbs up. We don't even have 200 thumbs ups yet. Actually, we just
okay.
hit it. We got 300 in here,
Yes.
only 200 thumbs ups. That's 100. There's a
Come on,
discrepancy.
guys.
Guys,
Come on.
smash the thumbs up. Let us know we're doing the right things here. We love talking cars with you guys. But Bill Miller says the only question I have is with the Zora having electric front wheel drive, where are they going to put the extra cooling and the additional weight? Now the Zora will be
Aha.
400 pounds heavier than the Z06.
Aha. So the frunk there that is gone for the ZR1, right? So they have the cooling in this one, ZR1. It's not going to be a problem because the E-Ray still has a frunk. So the front that the E-Ray has, there's not going to be space limitations to put a motor and a
Yeah.
battery in and they built the architecture for the car. Like I think you did a plant tour at the Bash, right, right, Justin?
Yeah.
They explained to you how the way the mono frame looks, they built it that way for the batteries in the very first place.
Yep.
So there's already space there. They have a whole frunk built with the E-Ray. So the frunk is a non-issue. They're just going to keep the cooling up there, put the
Yep.
motor and the batteries in where it would
The,
go in there
really,
anyway.
the
Boom.
only cooling that they even needed for the E-Ray is that vertical radiator in the
Right.
front. Now,
Right.
there was actually a video, and MDK's in here. He's the one that released it from Carlisle with one of the engineers who somehow looks exactly like Harlan, but isn't Harlan. He was talking. I know. I laughed when I saw this. I was like, "That's Harlan." And I was like, "Wait a minute, Harlan's not
Right.
that gray." But all right, whatever. So anyway, he's talking about the E-Ray whenever it was first. Actually, this was this past year at Carlisle. He's talking about the E-Ray and the radiators up front. being significantly thinner than the radiators on the Z06 because they didn't need to keep the car as cool as the Z06. So the cooling aspect of that hybrid motor is literally just that thin radiator, that the thin
Right.
vertical radiator. So cooling's not an issue, but the weight addition still is.
Right.
So
Well, the
now
weight is
we're 160 pounds up from the Z06 with the ZR1, plus a potential another 300 if they do the E-Ray battery pack motor up front. You're looking at well over 4,000 pounds, but you're also looking at a 1,200 horsepower car. Like, at what
all-wheel
point?
drive 1200 horsepower
Yeah,
car. Well,
yeah,
look, the counterpoint to all of that for the weight thing, right, guys? And let's keep it like we love lightweight, we love fast, whatever. But at some point, you get into like Bugatti territory where those cars weigh 5,000 pounds. Bentley Continentals, those cars weigh 6,000 pounds, and they
right,
haul ass, right?
exactly.
It just is a
All-wheel
matter of
drive
at some
cars
point,
are always
yeah,
heavier. That's just the way
yeah,
it works.
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And the space option is, or the space issue is not an option. Like
no,
you don't have to worry about space
yeah.
because they already proved they have the room for the entire frunk with the E-Ray that United says. So yeah.
People, whenever the Stingray first came out, we saw the cutaway cars. People were speculating that center tunnel was where they were going to put the battery packs from the very beginning. Like
From the beginning. Yeah.
GM was probably like face palming because they're like, how are these people? How do they know this stuff? Like,
We have nothing better to do than to sit around.
exactly. Supercar Ranch says, I still wish they would have made the Zora a fully different body and model like Ford GT is to the Ford Mustang. I wish that we just touched on this, but I wish the ZR1 and the Zora both, depending on if the Zora is a check box, I'm not sure how they're going to do it yet, but that makes sense. I wish the ZR1 would have been a different design, at least in the front end. If nothing else,
Right.
design the front bumper to be slightly different. So just like they did with the C7 back here, like
Yep.
David's been talking about, to
Yep.
make it so it's not so easily mistaken for a Z06, because especially with the low wing option, it looks, the only thing that's the distinguishing feature is the front hood, that
And
vent.
the split window. But
Yeah.
that's it.
And honestly, the split window, I'm kind of I I don't hate it, but I don't know that I love it. It's kind of an odd looking, almost last minute slapped on thing in my opinion, because they realized that this car was going to look a little too much like a Z06 and they needed something special. But actually, you know what? I'm going to make a poll here because I'm curious. How many of you guys like the split window? I'm not saying I don't like it, so don't take me wrong. I'm just not 100% sure I like it. I'm going to put, do you love the split window of the ZR1? Let me know,
See, I
guys. I'm
love the
curious.
split window,
You
but what
do?
I think I do, but I think what I would have loved more is if they did it for an entire either generation or model year kind of thing, like they did back with the original split windows, right? Like what year that car is because it's got a split window on it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas now it's just that extra. I mean, I love it. Like again, I mean, I'm a huge split window guy fan. Like even growing up when
Right.
I was more of a Mustang fan, like a split window Corvette. Are you kidding me? Those things are gorgeous. So I mean, you have that same thing. It's a little bit different because of the way the body styles are now versus back then. But I do kind of see what you're saying though about it kind of feeling like now that I see it more, that maybe it was like, oh man, we need something to
Last
really
second.
set this
Yep.
apart. And they're kind of
Yeah.
like, oh, we could do a split window because that
Yep.
would be an easy design change at the
It's an
last
easy
minute.
thing. Yep.
Yeah,
Supercar Ranch
exactly.
says that he agrees. At least a new front bumper, that would have been the one thing that would have
Yes.
gone a long way. And
Yeah.
honestly, it's weird because I bet you at some point it comes up that the sales of the C8 ZR1 could have been better if they had distinguished the look of the car just a little bit more.
Yeah, and
Now,
do like new front bumper, yes, but also new front arrow. Like, why is it got to be the same front bumper and the same
and see,
arrow,
I
right?
I
Like,
heard initially with the big ZTK wing that they were going to offset that with bigger
same
arrow in the
here,
front. That's all
but
they would
it's
have had to
not.
have done. Make the
Yep.
splitter on the Z06, make that splitter double it. Instead of this thick, make it that thick. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
that's it.
yeah. And I know they get some arrow with the cooling duct through the hood, but still,
Right.
though, like from a visual standpoint, to set it apart, like have a little bit different bumper, but also have like the arrow needs to be different, not the exact same thing.
I
But
agree. Um, Will Ratcliffe said that he heard the split window was for cooling, and it is to some degree, but that's not the biggest reason they put it on there. The biggest reason it's
right,
on there is for looks, but it
right.
also does help to some with some degree. with cooling. If you think about that rear hatch is totally vented, so putting more
Right.
vents down the centers, it's not going to make that big of a difference. But
Right.
um,
And that's one of my favorite things after I drive it and park it and I turn around and look and I see the heat coming up through
yeah,
the vents.
yeah,
And
you can see like the yeah, it
yeah,
is. And it's
this
because
is cool.
it's because if you drive your car like I do mine, which I'm sure you do,
I
I am
do.
not easy on this car. Like I ride this thing like it should be driven, like just hard. And every time I park it, I get out and the transmission fans just woo for like 10
Oh
minutes
yeah,
after.
all the
And
fans
if
keep
you're
running.
driving the
Yeah.
car any differently, like that's how it should be driven.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Let's see. There was another question I wanted
Well,
to.
and I'm
Prof-
hoping we get one at Carlisle.
Professor Corvette's killing it over here. He says, now a split front windshield would have been cool. His comments are killing it tonight, man. Thanks for the comedic
I
relief. I love it.
I would really love though if again, and I know it's all about cost at this point, right? Because even if it comes in at 200 something K, you are way, 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 way better than that. Now you're five, six, $700,000 car territory,
Yeah,
but the things that could have made a little bit more of that hypercar difference would have been the things like we've talked about before, like thinner windshields,
yep,
things like that. And
yep,
he brings up that point about the
yep,
split front windshield. It's funny, but they could have if they were like, screw it, cost is no option, and boom, and we'll see. I mean, they've done it before. They did it in the C6 so I mean,
yep. Someone asked me about a roof scoop on the Zora model. There's there's really only one reason why I don't see that happening, and it's because they're not going to get rid of the removable target top. And if you have a
right.
removable target top, you could do a roof scoop still. It just complicates things. I don't see it happening
But it's
at this
not
point.
necessary because the only thing Azora is going to add to you is the battery and the
That's
power
true.
for the
Yeah,
battery. Like the cooling's already there, the power's already there. You don't need more than 1,064 from the internal combustion engine, like in the back. So there's no
agree.
need functionally for it. So
Exactly. Honestly, all that would really do is mess up aero because it's gonna be like a parachute catching wind.
yep, it sure
Paul
would.
Paul Junker says, Justin, I hope GM will do legitimately timed Nurburgring times for these monsters.
Yes,
I doubt it.
I,
It
I
seems like
I'm still
GM
waiting
doesn't
on my
have any care to put these numbers out. We've already seen uh God, his name's slipping my mind
Misha.
now. Yeah, Misha.
Misha.
He already
Yeah,
did the Nurburgring with the Z06 and said easily an under 7 minute car. So this
he said it's a
ZR1,
sub.
it would,
Yep,
and they said in a couple videos, GM said in a couple videos that every single person that drove this car at the Nurburgring hit over 200 miles an hour. Every single one.
yep,
Even if it was your first time in the car, they hit over 200 miles an hour. So
yeah.
this car no doubt puts down some ridiculously good track times, but I don't know that we'll ever see them.
I don't know. And again, like if we don't, I mean, they mic dropped with the 1,064 number. That was their mic drop moment right
Yeah.
there. You know
Yeah,
that
we would
that'll.
probably heard it then.
Yep. Yep.
Do you think that the C8 ZR1 will be one of the fastest cars in the world? I know as of
Yeah,
right now it probably is.
it is. Yeah. I mean, even if it's just doing 215, do a Google search of how many cars can do 215
Yeah.
right now,
Do a
and
Google
that's
search of how
250.
many cars come factory with over 1,000 horsepower. You're
Right.
probably
Exactly.
that list has got to be less than 10, and those are
Oh yeah. And those are
million
counting in
dollar
fair. Yes.
cars.
And very low production, like
Yeah.
some of the Koenigseggs and stuff, like
Yep. Yeah,
very,
like
very
one
low
of
production.
ones.
Yes, exact crazy stuff. Yeah.
Elijah
I think
said
it's funny though that they were. Go ahead.
the ZR1 would be sub 640 and in the 630s Mercedes AMG 1 territory.
I
Maybe,
agree. I guarantee you.
yeah.
I agree. I think it is a worthy competitor to the AMG
I
one with
feel
the
like
numbers and the arrow that it has.
based on what Misha said about the Z06, I would say conservatively speaking, the Z06 is probably a 650 to 652 car on the ring. You add the power of the ZR1, you're probably into the low 640s
And the arrow.
and the arrow. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is a legitimate competitor to the McLaren Sennas, the Mercedes AMG ones. Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. Bill Miller says they don't want to put fast times for anything for insurance costs and probably EPA and other things we don't consider. That is probably true. One thing, and like we talked about a little bit tonight already, is that the insurance on this car is going to be ridiculous. So if they start putting out track numbers like that that are also ridiculous on top of it, that I could see that hurting insurance rates. So that could be a potential reason.
Well, and Brandon and I were talking because he has the Tesla Plaid, and they've been out averaging well under 10 seconds for a quarter mile.
Yeah.
Like this thing with turbos, the way turbos work, you're not going to get that instant hit, maybe like the Plaid does with the all-wheel drive and the electric motors. But I'm going to tell you right now, this thing is going to top end like a monster. It's going to be close to Tesla Plaid quarter mile times, but the trap speeds are going to be higher because these turbos are going to come in
They were
big on the
already
top
trapping
end.
almost 160 from what I saw.
Yeah, I know. That's
It's nuts.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a good point. Kelly says AMG 1 is a $6 million car and the ZR1 has more horsepower. Like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, even if you're not a ZR1 fan, even if the car came out and it didn't wow you the way you had hoped, these are the kind of stats that you have to keep in mind. This car, even at $250,000, this car is going to destroy cars that are 20 times more expensive.
Yeah,
That's a huge win for Chevy.
100%. Well, and again, like these hypercars are made of all these exotic materials and they're much lighter and stuff. But when you're talking, you can overpower some of that to a point.
Right.
And if you have enough aero where you can maximize the amount of power you have, I mean, this car is going to be a monster, man.
Yep. Tyler says no insurance issues if you have NCM. Yeah, you're going to do better with NCM for sure, but I guarantee you that's going to be one of their more expensive cars to insure.
Yeah, they told me the same thing. The C8 Z06 and the ZR1 are the two most expensive cars they currently insure for.
Chopper Larry says if you can afford the car, you can afford the insurance. Yes, that's true, but that doesn't mean that you want to.
Right. Especially if you're like, oh, oh man, I don't want to put miles on my ZR1, and you're still paying like that every month for your
and that's going to be the
Yeah.
majority of people. Like,
Exactly.
I saw this actually pop up in my comment section where somebody said, "Great, now a bunch of these guys with a lot of money are going to go out there and buy the ZR1, and it's going to sit in their garage for the next 20 years." Those are the guys that keep your insurance rates down. So those are the good guys. You want those guys to exist.
Yeah.
If they do a random, poll of how many people own these cars versus how many have crashed them, and all these guys are keeping them in their garage and stuff, those are the guys keeping your rates down. You like those guys.
That's right.
So let's see. Do you love the split window ZR1? We had 128 votes. 74% say yes. 26 say no.
Yeah.
So
I love it.
3/4 say yes. I'm in the middle. I don't love it. I don't hate it.
Yeah.
I think like I went on that visualizer and made my car, kind of like how you would expect my car to look, black on black on black. And I like the split window look better when it's black or carbon fiber, which I think it was either one of the engineers had alluded to the fact that you could possibly get this in carbon fiber.
Right.
I think it would look better.
Which again, for me, that's all I'm all about, carbon fiber.
I think it would look better in carbon fiber versus body color painted. That's my thing.
Right. I agree with you there. The only time I like the black, like because I did some building on it as well. I like the way it looks in the black because it's a little bit more subdued. But then if you had a like some crazy green or something, I'd be like, yeah, screw it. I want to see it because I want to see as much green as I can see, or Sebring orange. I want to see as much Sebring orange as I can. So
Chris Jones says, who will crash it first?
Who was the guy that crashed the ZR1 at the race?
Royce.
Yeah, Mark, he'll be the first.
It would be hilarious. I mean, I swear, like, if I was Mark Royce, just to kind of put this whole thing, kind of put a cherry on top, because, he has access to
they
these
should
cars.
Give him one just to crash.
I'd come out and wreck it on purpose.
Yes. DMC, give him one just to crash it.
I think that'd be hilarious, yeah.
Yeah, me too. I think they should give him one just to crash it.
All right, so guys, real quick, before we wrap this up, I want to talk about the one thing that wasn't ZR1 related, or kind of isn't, is the constraint report for the 2025 model year. So if you are looking to get a 2025, there's already constraints, and the 2025 model year doesn't even start production until September, and there's already constraints. Yeah. And wouldn't you know it, the Z07 package is on constraint.
Carbon fiber is always on it. Yeah.
Who would have thought?
I'm waiting for the day where GM puts constraints on constraint.
Yeah, there's a constraint on the word constraint, so we're just gonna say this stuff is unavailable.
Right.
But yeah, there's very little very little hysteria, no Sebring orange, no competition yellow. So the hysteria is going to be definitely the first color we see in 2025, but still very few of them. Habanero interior is going to be pretty limited, it looks like. Very few of those for the Stingray, none for the E-Ray, and doesn't say anything for the Z06, so maybe we'll see some there. But yeah, the carbon flash and carbon fiber high wings, you get 32 of them. So for the most part, those are gone. And yeah,
Yep.
the carbon fiber ground effects. That's going to limit
Yeah.
Z06, Z07 production to the point where you're not going to get a Z07 again. We're 3 years at this
Again.
point. We're 3 years
Again.
into, or
Yep.
yeah, 3 model years into the Z06, and you still can't reliably get a Z07 package car. It's insane.
Yep. Yep. And that was like why that's why Brandon and I didn't get it, because of one constraint. So we're like, all
Yeah.
right, well, I'm not waiting indefinitely. So
I would have liked to have gotten a Z07 car. I'm pretty happy with the way that my car turned out, though. Even though it's not a Z07, it looks like it, which is ultimately 99% of the reason I wanted Z07. But I
right.
still would have liked to have had it. So it's
Yeah.
unfortunate that this is still
Still an issue.
on constraint. I mean, you'd think that they would have changed suppliers or something at this point to make this work.
Yeah, and again, carbon fiber, is not easy to set up to work, but like at some point, because when you take the plant tour, they talk about when you're a tier one supplier for GM, like there's a no fail policy, like you can't have one part that fails.
Yeah,
There should, in my mind, there should
there
be a
should be.
policy too that says, hey, if you can't deliver on the amount of stuff we need, like
Yeah,
you're not tier one anymore. Yeah, I just kind of feel
there
that
should be
way
a little
about it.
wiggle room on that. I mean, if they give you a part here and a
Exactly.
part there that doesn't meet their expectations, those are the ones you paint carbon flash. Um,
But again, like how they can't meet the demand of the carbon fiber when you like,
uh,
hey, this is how many units we're selling. Like,
so Professor Corvette in with another one. He says that will be the new color, constraint green. Oh man, you got to get on
he's
more of these
killing it
lives, man.
tonight.
You're killing it.
Yeah,
I
he's
love it.
killing it tonight.
All right, so are we allowed to talk about why these
I hope
constraints
we
happen?
get
Mr. T, you
I
can
hope
talk
we get
about
some
whatever you
time with
want
the
in here,
car.
man.
Yeah. And then I hope we get more of the car at Carlisle. That's gonna be a lot of fun. Like I hope we get like some real
So
time to like.
that was another thing I wanted to talk about tonight, guys. They already talked about it. The ZR1, it will be there at Carlisle. 100% it's going to be there. Now, how many is there? They're going to have, if I had to guess, they're going to have at least 2. They'll have the yellow one and the Hysteria purple. But usually down over the hill is where you'll see just a bunch of ZR1s parked that the engineers are driving. And they'll just be parked down there all dirty and like you lived in and stuff. You'll see them all down there. So odds are good we're going to see the majority of the new colors there too in some way, shape, or form. But
Right.
they'll have their display cars. There'll be at least 2 of them. And
Mm.
odds are very good. The last 2 years, the AWE booth has been right beside the Chevy booth. So if you come by to see the ZR1, you got to walk right past my booth to see it. And
And
don't
we're right
and
next
don't
to you.
and don't you dare walk by and not stop.
Hey, and we're right next to you.
Yeah. So
So
you're gonna see
yeah,
both of us.
yeah. Brandon will be there. I'll be there. Everybody, we're all gonna be right there. So it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, ZR1 has an awful lot of carbon. Imagine the constraints on that. And that's I've already started telling people the very first month of production for the ZR1, expect ZTK is unavailable.
Zero. That's
Zero
right.
ZTK. If I had to guess, you're going to go at least a month, maybe 2, with no ZTK at all, which is ridiculous because everybody's going to want the ZTK car, and you're not even going to be able to get.
Correct.
Just like this, the Z06 was the same thing. The car they
Yep.
showed the most of was the Z07 package car, and that was the one you couldn't
Yep.
even get.
Yep.
Yeah, they should have a cutaway there as well. Yep.
Yep.
I want the ZR1 hood on my Z06. I don't care about the front. See, the ZR1 hood design existed like 3 years prior to the ZR1. I think it's weird.
It
Chevy
is weird.
literally either looked at that hood and copied it or something because that same style hood exists and you don't have to lose your frunk. So,
I think
assuming you
that
don't
hood
want it
was kind of
functional.
that hood was kind of based off the C8R though. I think the C8R had that, and then somebody kind of like modeled it for the C8 base car or just or
Well,
whatever.
that might be the case, but this hood existed before the
Oh
C8R.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah, 100.
I thought about getting it at one point, but I don't love the idea of a carbon fiber hood. Like I like carbon fiber, but I don't want it. It just looks weird to me. I would want it painted black, and painting over top of carbon fiber would literally kill me. So I can't do
Right, right.
it. All right, so
Yeah, I couldn't do
guys,
that either.
I think that's pretty much going to do it for tonight. If you guys could please smash the thumbs up button. one last time. We definitely killed our record here. We got 263 thumbs ups already. So very good stuff there.
Awesome.
But really appreciate you
Well,
guys all coming out tonight and
yeah, and
interacting, of course.
make sure you guys come by, see us all at Carlisle. We're all going to be pretty much in the same spot there. Come by and say hey. We love to. Actually, I meant to tell you, Justin. On the train from the airport today, some guy recognized me and was like, "Hey, you're on Justin Horsepower Obsessed
Nice.
live stream once in a while." I was
That's
like,
awesome.
"Yeah, I guess he's a subscriber of yours. If you're watching tonight, hey." But yeah, he recognized me from being on your live stream. But he's been a subscriber for years. And then we started talking about the ZR1. So the whole bus or train ride over to the show, we're talking about the ZR1. So
That's awesome, man. That's
yeah, it was
that's
great.
exactly what we wanted to have happen here. I mean, you guys deserve your your following as well, and I'm only here to help amplify that for you. So yeah, like David said, we'll be basically side by
Hey,
side, actually back
come
to
by and
back
see us.
at
Yep, back to
Carlisle.
back.
So you're
Yep,
going to see a lot of them at my booth and vice versa. So if you stop by either one of our booths, you're going to see all of us. So
yep.
come by, say
And
hi.
we'll be over working on Justin's car. He'll
Yeah.
be hanging. Like, I mean, we're all going to be intermingling. So come by and
Yep.
say hey, guys. Everybody, come by and say hey.
Yep. And I'll be right beside AWE, and on my other side should be the Chevy booth with all the ZR1s in it. So, like I said, if you come by to see the ZR1, stop by and say hi. We'll have a good
Absolutely.
time. But
Absolutely.
that's going to be it. So, actually, Nate's going to be there too now.
Yep, Nate's coming up
We got him
with his
hooked up with
E-Ray.
something, so
Yep, with his E-Ray. Yep.
he'll be right there
And
with us.
we'll have multiple cars with painted intakes in our booths and samples. You guys will get to see it all. It's good. And some of these in person when you see them, like the Rapid Blue and the Sebring. Oh God,
Yeah,
they look good.
yeah.
They look good.
All right, guys. Again, big thumbs up. Hit that thumbs up on your way out, and yeah, we'll see you guys same time, same place next Monday night.
See you guys.